So we'll go ahead and have Sonia take a roll.
I keep losing my my mute button. Sandy Henry Cow Creek.
Yo.
I'm here. Angie Blackwell. I see her here. Julie is from Coos is here. She is muted. Jemiah. Valerie from Warm Springs. Diane Tiemann from Burns Paiute. Michael Cherry. Angela Fasana. Alyssa Severson. Christina Simpson. Jennifer Jackman. Melissa Montero.
Here.
Lloyd Commander. We see you, Lloyd. And Alyssa Lane Keene.
I know I
Okay,
missed
we
my
have
name.
quorum.
I'm here now.
Okay, thanks, Angie. We do have 5 tribes representatives, so we do have quorum, so we can proceed.
Excellent. So then we're moving right along through the agenda. So we're going to do some hiring, introductions of our our people, our new people. Whew, a hard time wrapping my lips around that. So Alyssa's going to give us some staffing updates and make some introductions. But I'll frame the conversation in regards to the hiring. Sonia and I were as part of the TAC group. We're on the hiring committee for these 2 candidates, and we came out of those interviews feeling very good about the folks that we interviewed, and these two new staff members were hands above the rest as far as being someone that we wanted to work with and work with us as the tribes. So I am super tickled to have them on staff. And I think as you guys get to know them, you will be super tickled as well. One of them's been kind of floating around in Delk before, so some of you may have had some interactions with Dana in the past. But Paulina is a new face to us, and we are very pleased to have her here. So you're on, Melissa.
Thanks, Sandy. And I just want to appreciate Sandy and Sonia for participating in the interview process. I know it's not easy to find several hours in your week to participate in interviewing. So thank you. And I want to thank you all as Tribal Advisory Committee members for helping to develop these position descriptions, the screening criteria, really prioritizing the desirable attributes that you wanted to see in these roles, and making sure that we have a strong tribal affairs office as we are a new agency. So just appreciate you all for taking the time to provide that really thoughtful feedback for us as an agency. I'm very excited that we have a tribal affairs office, and Dory, I know, is very upset that she couldn't be here today. She is ill, but she is incredibly excited that we have a full tribal affairs office, and she is not a lone team of 1. But Paulina and Dana both started with us in their roles last week on the 4th. So 6 days in, if you count weekends. So it's been a fast and furious journey, but really excited to have them on board. And I would love to let them kind of introduce themselves to you, share a little bit about their background and their hopes, and see if you all have any questions for them. And I'll hand it over to Paulina to introduce herself.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's an honor to be here and to be selected as the Tribal Affairs Director in the Department of Early Learning and Care. So, and I don't take this position lightly. I'm very passionate about working with tribes and listening to what the priorities are, and making sure that they're represented and that their voices are heard when these decisions are made. And so just a little bit about myself. I don't want to launch into a long thing, but I'm an and I am Dene. I'm an enrolled member of the Navajo Nation. I grew up in northern Arizona on Navajo land, speaking my language and also practicing my culture. And I grew up in, I went to school and grew up in a school that was in my community that was staffed by my relatives, and they were very caring and made sure that I got a good education and a good foundation. So those are the kind of foundation that I would like for every Native child to experience. So that's what I've been working to do in my entire career and getting ready for to do that. Just a little bit about my professional background. I have been an educator for about 20 years. Some of it has been in urban areas in Phoenix, teaching diverse students, all the way from like early childhood up to 8th grade, and then some high school as well. And then later, I had the opportunity to work in tribal communities, working with, I moved to South Dakota and worked and taught on Pine Ridge Indian Reservation, working with the Oglala Sioux tribe and working, teaching their learners and getting to know a lot of people in that process. And later my journey took me back to Arizona to work in the Gila River Indian community. And again, working with the little kids all the way from early childhood up to 5th grade, and then getting them ready for middle school and just other opportunities in life. And then most recently, I came to Oregon in 2017 in pursuit of a PhD at the University of Oregon in the special education PhD program. And I was really interested in exploring like why our Native students, their school outcomes and educational outcomes were the way they were. It was, it was not very promising. So I wanted to do so I spent my time in the classroom, trying to fill those gaps and those deficits. And I'm like, there's got to be a reason why this is happening. So researched that, did a lot of research, and there's a lot of inequities in the historical experiences of our Native people, and I've been dedicated to identifying those barriers and finding resources to fill those gaps, and making sure that tribal communities have access to those resources and to opportunities so that our young people can have a good experience, kind of like what I described, where everyone was concerned about me. And to this day, some of those people, when I go home, they want to know what I'm doing. When they see my mother, they're like, how is she doing? How are my brothers doing? And that's what I would like to see for our young children, people who care about them and community members who care about them, and fostering that. And part of that work is educating people about like just our indigenous, our kinship and our sense of relations, and having the sense of relatives and our values, why we, some of them need to come back, some of them, they're there, they just need to be recognized. So really advocating for that, so that we have, so that our students can thrive in school, at home, in their community, and also in life. So I'm very grateful for this opportunity to work with you all. And I know that you have a lot of knowledge, and I'm eager and excited to learn from you and also work with you. Thank you.
Thanks, Paulina.
And Dana, please introduce yourself.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Well, hello, everyone. My name's Dana Castano. Like Sandy said, I've been floating around DELC since February of last year in the capacity of a grant manager. So I manage the Early Childhood Equity Fund and Oregon Prenatal to Kindergarten program. So I'm familiar with some of you. And since I was able to join last month's TAC meeting, I see a couple more familiar faces. So I grew up here in Oregon. I kind of figured out what I wanted to do over many, many years after finishing high school and going to college and working and not finishing college and just working and then going back to college. So finally, before the pandemic hit, I actually finished my bachelor's degree, which is in economics. My minor is political science. So the policy work is very interesting to me. I was also lucky enough to, at that time, that was when my son was born, and he's 4 now. So I got to stay at home with him, and then the pandemic happened. So I just figured I'd stay at home with him, and I managed to get a master's degree, and that's finance and economics. So like, I'm very analytical and I do like numbers, but at the same time, I love volunteering and doing stuff in my community. Part of that was actually thanks to my son. We got involved with Family Building Blocks, which is one of the grantees actually for OPK, the Oregon Prenatal to Kindergarten program. But so we were involved with their Healthy Families and then their Relief Nursery. And I joined their Parent Leadership and Policy Council. And so that's how I kind of got into the early childhood space and ended up at DELC last year. Other than that, I also volunteer for CASA, the Court Appointed Special Advocates. I help out with some grants and administrative stuff, some data, but not actually as a CASA, which is an amazing thing. So we need more of those just in the world in general. Other than that, I also, before I came here, I did a brief stint as a financial analyst, and that just didn't have meaning to me. And I think that's one of the things that drew me to DELC in general. And then once I kind of got my foot in the door, that brought me into this position. So just a little bit about me. In relation to tribes is I am a tribal member. I am Turtle Mountain Band of Chippewa, which is in North Dakota. So
Oh, hi, Naomi. Is Dennis in the office by any chance?
Haley, you're unmuted.
Anyway, my family, my mom and dad divorced when I was really young. So I don't have the connection that I wanted to have and that I still want to have. And I think that's one of the reasons why this work is so important to me. And I just have also, since being at DELC, have tried to intentionally ask questions and make connections between the grants and the Office of Tribal Affairs, and kind of had an eye towards where the tribes stand in relation to DELC and what we've done in the past for like our granting processes and how they were involved. So I really am honored to have the opportunity to be here and be in this role and just play a part of something that I think is going to be really great. I know I have a lot to learn, even though I know some acronyms for DELC, but I thank you in advance for your patience in helping get me up to speed. So yeah, that's me. And I think I'll pass it over to Chair Henry again.
Well, thank you. I don't believe I've ever been referred to as Chair Henry before. I kind of not sure how I feel about that. Thanks. Again, I super tickled with these 2 hires. Just really see nothing but great things coming from the both of them. So yes, right. Okay, so let's move down to our next agenda item, and that is our Tribal Early Learning Plan with our actions and outcomes from the AIAN. Alyssa, I have the crosswalk that you sent out. Are you going to look at you, popping it up on your computer as we speak? Yes.
This is Marissa just anticipating. She's on
that's
it.
Nice. Yeah, nice. So as a group, we have talked about a lot of things. And one of the decisions that we've made in the last 2 or 3 months was circling back to honor the sovereign nation, the government to government relationship that tribal nations have with all of these government agencies, DELC, HEC, TCSP, all of those. And so we've kind of come full circle after looking at a lot of different options and a lot of different possibilities, and have now circled back around and have more or less landed. We're still we're not fully there, but more or less have landed on developing our own early learning plan that draws from both the AIAN Student Success Plan and the Raise Up Oregon RU2 plans, and taking elements out of both of those that are very relevant to the work that we're doing with our tribal youth, and having a success plan for early childhood education that comes out of this work group, out of this tribal advisory committee. We have a document here in front of us that our friend who's no longer with us, Jonas, he moved on to other things last month, but he developed this crosswalk along with Alyssa. And what we'd like to do is, one, review this and look at this, and then with the group's blessing, look at developing a work group from the TAC that would work on this plan, and then bring it back to the TAC to have discussions and approvals, back to the work group, back to the TAC. I would encourage us to do it in that mode with the work group versus having all of us in the space here and now and kind of working through it. Because I feel like we can move the work ahead a little bit farther, but still have that tribal accountability, right? Because no decisions would be being made without the full consensus blessing of the tribal advisory group. So, having framed up all that discussion, I'm going to hand it off to Alyssa, and I printed one off for me to look at, because when you do that when you wear bifocals. So we can kind of start going through these elements and one by one, and where they come from, and have a discussion. So I'm going to kick it off to Alyssa then. Thanks.
Thank you, Sandy. So yes, one of Jonas's parting gifts to us was his sort of analysis of this crosswalk we've all been working on together over the last couple meetings. So we had started off with you all as the TAC directing DELC to look at the draft AIAN Student Success Plan and pulling out the goals, objectives, metrics that named early learning, and pulling out anything else that seemed like it could have a parallel in early learning. And that's everything here that's in black. We spent some time at the November Tribal Advisory Committee reviewing. We added some additional outcomes, some next steps in bold. I added some suggestions in red about where I thought DELC might have some next steps in order to help answer some of these questions. And then Jonas has added in purple what he is suggesting as possible objectives, reflecting back on his year plus with the TAC and the conversations we've collectively had. And then, as Sandy mentioned, he also had the wisdom to crosswalk this with Raise Up Oregon 2.0 and all of the work that the TAC did to define objectives and strategies for the Early Learning Council in centering the needs of tribal nations and promoting tribal sovereignty and good government to government consultation. We also spent time at the last meeting in December going over the programs and funding streams that exist, and there's some data there. So with this page, I'll kind of start at the top. There are two metrics or actions I had added because you all had mentioned these when we were in some early stages of talking about a tribal hub. And there'd been some reflection from a metric space of, do we even capture demographic data of children enrolled in publicly funded programs, of children suspended and expelled from care, and is there a way we could track that for American Indian Alaska Native children? So those were added, although they were not named in the AIAN state plan. Jonas's suggestion is that those roll into an objective of improving tribal access to DELC programs. So that's something you all can think about if that objective makes sense, if that actually is the objective you would like DELC to work towards, or if there's some nuance there. Sandy, you want me to kind of pause one by one? Is that the best way to go about this?
I think so. That way, if members of the TAC have some comments or questions that they want to have answered, they could do that.
Okay. Yeah, Julie.
I just wanted to double check with you, Alyssa. You said that you sent us this.
This is the version that Jonas just shared with us. So I'm happy to send it out right now, and it'll be posted online with the edits from today after the meeting. But I will send it out right now, Julie.
Follow-up question for those of us that are not on home base right now, out
Yeah.
traveling around and that kind of thing. Is this something that it would be okay if once we received it via email that we could respond anything via email back to you?
Yes, absolutely, Julie. Folks can feel free to send Dory your feedback directly, and she can work with Dana and Paulina to kind of incorporate edits. So we'll make sure that you all get the updated version that reflects any conversations today to build off of.
Okay, one last question, I think, I'm not sure. I just want to make sure that I have it right in my mind that with the work that was done with Otella, that's just been kind of like set on the shelf for now. And it may or may not be revisited, but it hasn't disappeared.
Yeah, great question, Julie. Last month the TAC decided we don't need the branding and we don't need a website, and so those bodies of work were paused. The branding work is there if that shifts down the road. But I would say this is actually building off of a lot of what the TAC outlined as part of the initial Otella thinking. So when we'd had the in-person session, gosh, not this summer, but the summer before, I think it was, when we were up in Portland, and you all came out with kind of the mission of Otella, some potential reportable metrics. That work is incorporated in this alongside the AIAN state plan work.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Julie, I'd like to add into that, Julie, that really what we circled back to, what we seemed to drift away from and now have circled back to is a structure that honors the tribal sovereignty. And a lot of that work that we were doing that was leading towards a hub, it wasn't really honoring the sovereign nation, the government to government relationship. So yes, we have put a pin in some of that work, but we pulled a lot of that work forward, and I feel like we did a good job of looking at and evaluating and analyzing all of the different options about how we could move forward with creating early learning opportunities for our kids. So yeah, I don't want us to be in the mindset of, oh my God, we just took 7 steps backwards, because I don't feel like we did that. I feel like we're moving forward. We're moving forward planfully, and we're moving forward with the anticipation that we're going to have an outcome of a very solid product. So that's just
because I wasn't a part of that changing process. I just, that's where I'm coming at with my questions and stuff, just to get myself up to date with the understanding that you guys are putting forward now, so that
well,
I'm
Julie,
clear.
you're about to get put on a work group because you asked real good questions.
I'm good with, I can go like, the email thing, but we all wear too many hats, so that's the thing. I can go back and forth with the email and that kind of stuff, but showing up in person, that's not so good for me. So
well, we appreciate your analysis and your tough questions. Thanks.
Thank you for your help.
Okay, Alyssa, you get to move forward.
All right. So the next kind of cluster that Jonah suggested. Oh, yes, please, Angie.
Yeah, actually, I do have one thing on this. On that first. We're on the first one still, right? Or that's what we were.
Yep, the kind of first 2 rows there. Mm-hmm.
Yes. So one thing that I think that is kind of the elephant in the room is the number of tribes actually participating in DELC funded programs. So Sandy had pointed out a couple of meetings back, wait a minute, nobody else is doing Preschool Promise, nobody else is doing OPK. There are very few of us that are taking advantage of those funding opportunities. So I think that one of the metrics there should be, the number of programs that the tribes are actually you know, because the objective is that tribal access to DELC programs, not necessarily individual children or families access to DELC programs, which I agree should stay there, but also the number of tribes.
Thanks for that, Angie. And Marissa, I know live time editing is sometimes a pain. So I know Marissa is capturing this feedback so that we can incorporate it. And Marissa, if you click on the programs tab at the bottom, Angie, one of the next steps from the December meeting was to add the programs. And so we were able to confirm there is only one tribe in OPK, and that's Grand Ronde, of course. And then, of course, Tribal Head Start is an option that we don't manage. And then there are 3 participating in Preschool Promise, Cow Creek, Grand Ronde, and Klamath, and 3 participating in Equity Fund, Cow Creek, Grand Ronde, and Warm Springs. So we've added that. That was one of the next steps you asked for us. We've got that added.
Okay, super. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Angie. Okay. So the next kind of cluster that Jonah suggested, having an overarching objective, is promoting tribal history, shared history. And so this was, these actions and metrics were adapted, copy paste basically from the AIAN state plan, just replacing K-12 with early learning programs. So every early learning program in Oregon implements lesson plans on historically accurate, culturally embedded, place-based, contemporary, and developmentally appropriate AIAN curriculum, assessment tools, and instructional materials by 2030. That is the deadline that was in the AIAN plan. There hasn't been conversation yet as to whether you all would want to stick with that date, and I imagine that's a place where the work group might dig in. Similarly, within that tribal history, shared history, educators, administration, teachers, paraprofessionals, all support staff and school boards, again, we'd probably modify that, will receive AIAN culturally responsive professional training that will cover the essential understanding of Native Americans in Oregon of tribal history, shared history, to allow for implementation of learning in pre-K and kindergarten. So that is, again, pretty much a copy paste. And Jonas suggested that the overarching objective there could be promoting tribal history, shared history.
I have a question. And this comes from a place of my ignorance. Over here in the red where it says notes and next steps on your DELC curriculum authority, can you kind of explain what that really means?
Yeah, so, ODE has a whole review process for reviewing and approving curriculum, and the State Board of Education set standards. We don't have that process because we don't have school districts. And so what we would need to do is, I think, as the Tribal Advisory Committee sort of fleshes out this recommendation, we would need to look at where we have authority through rulemaking. I think and how far that could get us, recognizing that there are a number of early learning and childcare programs that their only interaction with us is they're licensed. And so they're not receiving funding from us. So this could be a nuanced one where maybe there are some curriculum requirements for our publicly funded programs and maybe less comprehensive requirements in rulemaking as an idea. So I think that's a place where we would want to kind of understand what avenues we'd have to implement what tribal history, shared history, and early learning looks like.
Excellent. And that rolls over very nicely in my brain to the next point down there below. So thank you.
Great.
Thanks for the explanation.
Thank you for the question. Okay. Do you want me to go to the next one, Sandy?
Yes, please.
So the next several really fall under the same header, and that's improving student outcomes, which, again, I don't know that student would be the term, but that's kind of the grouping that Jonas has suggested. So these, again, were in black, which means they were taken from the AIAN state plan draft. And so the first one would be increasing access to high quality community-based early learning programs, which create and utilize culturally supportive environments to prepare AIAN students for kindergarten. Supporting systems and advocating for processes that establish the successful recruitment of AIAN and AIAN Plus enrollment into early learning programs, which are culturally responsive, inclusive, and developmentally appropriate. Ensuring that all AIAN and AIAN Plus students are correctly identified and as mentioned in data justice, and create strong systems of support and intervention for students not on grade level. And Sandy, I'm going to pop out very quickly so I can testify in the House
okay.
Education Committee. Marissa has this pulled up and I will be right back.
Okay, and so she's going to pop out and testify. It's a legislative day, and so she has to give some testimony. I think she said only about 5 minutes worth, but
Yep.
Rather than just.
And I think here, really just seeing if there's feedback on the objectives themselves or any actions that folks think are missing that we haven't captured in previous conversations. That was sort of my hope in terms of where we were with this plan. And I will be right back.
Group, do we have any feedback we'd like to give at this point in time? Any questions that perhaps we can answer together?
Sandy, I have one observation just on line 11 there for student outcomes. I just don't think, I know this was taken from the student success plan, but I don't think that the terminology on grade level is really
appropriate. Sure.
for this. So
Sure.
just, I want to keep the bullet, but somehow change that language so that it's more appropriate for our age group.
So maybe like developmentally on track
Yeah.
or something like that rather than grade level.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think somebody's taking notes for us. Marissa, is that right?
Great.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, I'm taking notes and filling out everything. As long as you guys just point out which row, that way I can let her know. That'd be perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And Angie, just so you know, the work group, it's kind of like a voluntold thing for you. So just
Oh, no,
from
wait
your
a minute.
Yeah,
I'm not making any more comments.
Oh, come
tribal,
on.
well, from your tribal perspective, but also how to bridge for tribes that applying for state funds, and a lot of them we rely on our federal dollars for that, and then also with your involvement with your other groups, that we just thought that it would be such a good fit to pull the other tribes along.
I'm very happy to support that work, however is useful to other tribes.
I think that even just in having like our ed director, because like from our tribe, our Head Start director's not part of the meetings, but even being able to maybe in that work group have both the tribal education directors and Head Start directors, what are some of those fears around applying for state funds versus just relying solely on our federal Head Start, and just how that they can work together, because there's just, I think, some fear for some tribes in the process. Before early on, we had heard like, well, the reporting's a lot or the application is a lot, but just how because I think it will very much benefit all tribes to be able to apply for them. And I know, like, even with ours, with giving using and leveraging state funds to be able to do comparable salaries, because we're just losing people all the time to local programs. It's and you get one and you train them, or you get a bus driver, you pay for everything, and then they leave after that to go to for here it's community action, so, and you can't blame them. Everyone has to make a livable wage.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
But federal dollars only go so far.
Yep.
Yeah, and we've totally identified that. We've identified in repeated conversations in this group and in others that livable wage for the early childhood education career path is super important, and we need to do what we can to support that. Yeah.
I had a follow-up question for what Sonia said and Angie. So based on why there's the hesitancy, do you think it would make sense to, I think it's on row 4, to add like a component to that objective to like identify the barriers as well as increase access? Because I mean, I think that would be something that we'd have to address as Delk, right? Like if it's the timeline for applications being open or the reporting or something.
Yes, and I agree, because I was kind of surprised at the tribes not taking advantage of the Delk dollars. So yeah, it would be good to identify why, and really
I
identify.
think so as well. I mean, we're a tribe that we've never even had our own YDD grant. We've partnered with community agencies on it, but we've never carried our own YDD grant or so I just think that talking about those barriers and maybe in that subcommittee work, that's something that we can talk about, and how it can improve our programs would be very beneficial for expansions of our programs, because we all know that we have youth unserved in our communities, based on the limitations of our class sizes.
So when we met and talked about establishing a work group to develop this plan, we talked about having 4 members from the TAC be on that work group, and with the arbitrary of Sonia and I as chair and co-chair, and we are on bended knee asking Angie Blackwell to join us as well. And then would look for at least one other member of the TAC to join us on that work group, along with Delk staff. And I think that Sonia made a very important point in regards to some of us are education directors and are a bit removed from our programs, right? Because we're administratively, there's maybe some layers between us and what's actually going on. Yeah, I'm just thinking like Lloyd Commander, who's he's the head of Head Start for the Umatilla tribe, would be a good member of the work group. That's right, Lloyd. I did do that. I did.
And I can always step back as well, just because I'm not a director, and making sure that we have people that understand every one of these bullet points is so important.
Well, I don't know, Sonia, because the way we've that's a discussion we can have. But because as a group, how we agreed to do the chair and co-chair of this group, I feel like it's important as you as co-chair, because you'll slide up into chair, that you are there part of that work group in order to retain that institutional memory. I'm just saying. You can't slide out of it quite that easily. Nice try.
I'm finding that out. Oh,
Yes.
just do it. There's just so little to it.
It'll be fine. It'll be fine. Okay. So
Paulina?
Yeah, I did have a question, or probably just a suggestion for line 10, and that's identifying AI/AN students with, I know that the K-12, they use like various codes, whether AI/AN students are AI/AN students alone, or are they combined like with another ethnicity group? So I think, in that work group, that would have to be very clear, because I know that the state K-12 is moving towards those kind of codes for their identification, and that when I was looking at data, that was kind of a little bit confusing, because there's a transition towards those codes. So we just have to, as a work group, make sure we know which codes we're going to use for identifying AI/AN students. So that's something to think about before we start some work, and we can have discussion on that when we start to work for this.
And I know that's one that Alyssa had talked about, and was going to talk to ODE as well, and to see what data that Delk collects and how we can access it. So I I think that's really important, and that'll be a main point we'll have to talk about, because we know the erasure that happens in ODE with identification of our students.
Do we want to drop down to line 12? Where, the outcome is the improving graduation rates for AI/AN students, which may feel a little strange coming from an early education point, but I mean, as we know in this room, that's success. Successful outcomes in the education system start with successful interventions or outcomes in input and down low level. So, yeah. So it kind of threw me for a minute, but I'm talking myself back into like, oh, okay, well, that's where that makes sense. Any other comments from folks out in Zoom land?
I'm kind of with you, Sandy. I know it may not seem like it at first glance, but I know it definitely is related. I would like to somehow, I don't know, I can't remember what was on the header for all of these different columns, but maybe add in some, I don't know, indicators or something that attaches it. I mean, because how are we really going to measure that, our impact when our kids aren't graduating for 12 more years? You know what I mean?
Right.
So
Yeah,
I do want to keep it in some way, but I do think it needs a little bit of finesse and a little bit of massaging.
Okay. Excellent.
I think when we brought it up, it was during the hybrid meeting, and it was geared towards the teen pregnancies and how we can help those families transition with childcare and transitioning into like respite care, things like that, making sure they're able to graduate.
I see. Thank you so much, Melissa. That makes a lot of sense. That helps. Thank you.
Nice. Yes. So again, without, let's move down to line number 13, which is that building capacity for Native educators, coming out of the AI/AN student success plan. Huge problem, because we've talked about this, we've identified this, every tribe that is around the table here and beyond talks about how it is has been difficult to keep, to bring in Native educators to work with our youth and to keep them there. And I think that becomes kind of a wicked problem. One is, becomes a wicked problem because one, you have to have a family wage, right? And we know that's a problem in early childhood education. You have to have a fairly significant amount of education to enter into early childhood education that doesn't really commiserate with the rate of pay. And we do lose a lot workers to the public school systems rapidly. So I like that. I like this as being part of our plan. We're going to have to talk about outcomes, and what, the next steps would be identifying goals to support the Native educators. Like what does that look like? Does that look like scholarships? Does that look like turbo programs? I know that Chemeketa, maybe 3 years ago, Chemeketa partnered up with somebody, and they ran this turbo program where somebody help me with this, and we were able to go ahead.
It was a cohort of students from educators serving tribal programs, and they did a preschool certificate and an infant toddler certificate, all that lend itself to the AA. So, and it was really, I thought a valuable experience. It was good for our program, and we continue to have some of our students actually engaged in those cohorts. Although the cohorts they're going through now are not specifically just AIAN.
And it was, I actually participated in one because I needed to boost my Aura rating, for a variety of reasons. And it was all done remotely. Had really quality instruction. It was a great program. Would love to see more of that, to be able to bring more of our folks in, along, and through, right? And that couples very nicely with building with the next line, which is increasing that recruitment and retention. There has to be dollars there. People need to feed their families. They need to have insurance. They need to have all those things that make a standard of living. So we'll need to work on that.
If I could interject one thing, and I know this is still in the works, I think it's on the programs tab. If we want to toggle over there for a quick second, Alyssa did note that we are going to look also at funding streams in professional learning strategies. And so I know it says complete right next to it, but I'm not sure that that's accurate. That might be another thing. And sorry to switch gears a little bit. Back on the crosswalk, when we were looking at the programs, the graduation rates back up on line 12, I did notice on the far right, there's some notes about like OPK, home visiting. So I also wonder what other data pieces some of the other DELC programs might be getting already that we could kind of utilize in getting a similar data point to this that's just tailored. So that will require some research on probably mine and Paulina's end, but there might be a data point that we could pull from those programs. So I just wanted to put that out there as a thought.
Nice, thank you. And again, we're capturing that in our notes, because Marissa's the gal. Okay. So drop down then to line 15, where we're talking about strengthening partnerships with internal and external agencies. And we don't really have we don't really have anything in the outcomes and or in notes or next steps. So that would be a task of the work group as to whether or not we wanted to keep that and move that forward. That kind of becomes one of those hard to measure, in my world, in my way of thinking, that becomes kind of one of those hard to measure metrics. Sure, I can go to meetings, I can be in the room. Does that really mean I have a partnership with those folks, or am I just arbitrarily filling a seat, right? So I would not like to see us just take that out, but I think we need to be very thoughtful and planful about, okay, so what do the metrics look like? What does that look like to measure? But how do we move that forward?
I'm wondering about, and maybe this is just another kind of check the box thing, or like we were saying, Sandy, it's just like another seat in a butt in the seat. But earlier today, I was in a meeting where we talked about WIC and not having an MOU with WIC or an MOA. So I'm wondering if those MOUs that we have that are meaningful, I don't mean just, like it's a paper that's stored away, but some kind of official relationship. So we're documenting, like, this is what we expect out of this partnership. This is what we're contributing. So I actually am going to be working on that MOU, because we do actually have a pretty good partnership with our WIC program, but we have no documentation that of what that partnership looks like. and I'm thinking about other agencies as well. I've been myself wanting to have an MOU with our social services department for years. But it just keeps being pushed back to the back burner. So I wonder if somehow, that we could identify MOUs or MOAs as an indicator of those partnerships.
And the strength of those partnerships. That's yeah. That would be one way, huh, Angie?
Maybe.
Well, and then dropping down to the next one, I think those two speak to one another in that it is the government to government relationship when we start talking about partnerships with external agencies, right?
Mhm.
That's what needs to be honored and made meaningful. But isn't it funny how sometimes our most difficult partnerships to manage are those that are internal within our own organizations? And is that where we talk about tribal consultation? I just see a very little kind of a sovereignty through cyclical consultation and communications. So that will be another one that will require some look-sees from us for us. Any other comments, or should we move on down to 17? Hearing none, I guess we're going to move down to 17. So I think, Pauline, I think that's what you were talking about, the IFSP identification. I think you were mentioning that earlier.
I think this one has to do with the ISFP, has to do with the early childhood family information and resources, I think, or I'm sorry, an
Okay.
individualized family service plan. So like when they're developed, like what happens when they enter the K-12 system to like if students have special needs, when
Gotcha,
they're
okay.
infants, like what, making sure that those plans are implemented and they're recognized and they're incorporated into either an IEP or a 504 when they get into the into kindergarten and enter that system.
Very good. Okay, thank you. I was confused on my acronyms.
Was there a question?
Well, I wonder, so how does that, what safeguards, what process is in place that if you have an early childhood learner with an IFSP, that when they transition into the K-12 system, that follows them? That's my question.
The staff of the Head Start program has to do several things in order to transition children to kindergarten. And one is for those on IFSPs to ensure that the receiving school turns those into IEPs. That's when they start. And that it's like handing off the family and the child directly to the program and services and the teacher of the kindergarten class. Not, I don't know if everybody does that, but that's the preferred. And that would mean all of the copies of the IFSP and teacher notes and where the child is and how the child has progressed in the program, and turning those over so the next group can see what they've done and see where they can start off.
So Lloyd, you said that in the early Head Start, that's a protocol, that's a required protocol?
Yes, for Head
Okay.
Start.
Yeah, see, I don't think that, for those of us who don't have early Head Start, those of us who are just in the preschool promise, I'm not so sure that there's some sort of checkpoint. Sure, it would be best practices, obviously, right? But I'm not sure if there's some sort of checkpoint that makes sure it follows those kids. I'd have to.
I know for Head Start, we have those similar transitional meetings that happens with the new teaching team. And sometimes like someone from, normally school districts have like an admin department that deal with 504 plans and IEPs. And during those transitional meetings, you talk about like some of the triggers, the goals, some of the things that work, and how you can make accommodations and what have worked in the past in the classroom. I know that Head Start does it when they're transitioning into K through 12, and then also the Relief Nursery, who isn't like academically based, like Head Start is, also holds those transitional meetings when they're transitioning into K through 12, if they're on IFSPs, if they're like receiving services like for speech or cognitive supports or anything of that nature.
Yeah, I know that I know that our staff in the preschool promise has done that for students that were on those plans. Yeah, I was just curious about whether or not if there was teeth to it, right? If there was
Well, and those meetings are really hard. I can tell you as someone who has like a kid who is also on a 504 plan and also has a kid who has an IEP, it's like sometimes a school district can kind of really throw a lot of words at you, and it can be really difficult to understand. So I know at least when I was with Head Start, we were working on a way to like help advocate for support during those transitional meetings and helping the family understand what was happening. Because it can be a lot. And I know that at least here in Eugene, there's someone, she works with the University of Oregon. She's trying to start off a nonprofit that's geared just to supporting families with kids who are transitioning with IEPs and 504 plans and IFSPs, and just supporting them, like Indigenous families overall, because she also has a child who has an IEP, because it can be a lot. For someone who works in education, I know that it can be a lot too. So I'm sure it's a lot for families.
yeah, for sure. Okay, so as I'm looking at the clock, it's 5 after 4. And I know that we have a whole nother agenda item with the Otella grant review. Carla and Dana, we're going to talk about that. I want to make sure that we don't run out of time, so that those two ladies can have thoroughly present to us. So I guess I'm asking for a check-in from Carla and Dana in regards to what you're going to share with us today. Do we have time to continue moving through this document, or should we segue to item number 5 on our agenda?
Thanks for checking in. I kind of think we should wrap it up and pivot so that we don't go over on time.
Okay.
Maybe we could finalize who's going to be in the work group and talk about when to meet for that.
Excellent. Thanks for your candor on that. I appreciate it.
This discussion is very great and it needs to happen, but so does the Otella grant.
Yes, and it is the goal to have that work group that would work with going through this plan and moving it forward. So I am, because we have strong-armed Angie Blackwell, Sonia, and myself, I am looking for one more member from the group. I did ask that Lloyd be a part of it, but I'm not. I haven't heard from Lloyd as to whether or not that was something that he could work into his life. I see these as being like an hour like next Wednesday, about the same time. I'm a firm believer that any meeting that goes longer than an hour and a half is, you lose people. It's just really hard to maintain interest and get people to commit to longer meetings than that. So, as a group, how do we feel about that? I guess I'm looking for a commitment from Lloyd if he wants to do that. If not, I'm gonna open it up to other people in the group.
And Sandy, did I hear you say you were hoping to meet next Wednesday?
Yes.
So every other Wednesday, I have a staff meeting from 2:30 to 3:30.
Okay.
So I just, after we get the whole, group set up, maybe we could do like a doodle poll or
Like
something.
a 3:30 to
figure out-
4:30 kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
If you-
So I just wanted to throw that out there before we,
Sure. Sure.
moved on.
You bet.
Yeah, I could help, but the week of the 22nd, I'll be in DC.
Okay. Okay. So then, from the TAC group, then, Sonia, myself, Angie, and Lloyd. And then from Delk, it would be Paulina, Dana, and Alyssa. And we would meet next Wednesday for an hour-ish, starting at 3:30, and see how far we can get through the plan, and then bring the work that we've done back to the group, back to the TAC for our February meeting, and then just kind of keep bouncing that back and forth until we get through the process and have a plan that we're all happy with. Does that sound like a doable thing to folks?
Marissa, can you stop sharing just so we can see each other a little more easily? Thank you.
Oh, Jemiah slid in. So does that sound like a doable process for folks? Yes, Angie's saying yes, Paulina's yes. Okay. So then, having had that discussion and seeing, I believe, all positive affirmation from everybody in the room, I don't think I need to take a vote. But that's how we'll do it. If Marissa could, or Dory, whoever, could set us up with a Zoom meeting for next Wednesday at 3:30. Give us about an hour and a half max. And we'll just start, we'll look at the notes that you took for us today. Thank you. And start at the top again and look at the notes and then just kind of work through. And I think if we stay focused, that we don't have, that this will not take us forever. We can go through it. Because we were actually ahead of the game by cherry picking out of 2 established plans already. So yay us.
Sandy, I just
Okay.
had a question for you. I wasn't sure how the Tribal Advisory Committee, now that you kind of solidified that we're going through with this plan, would like to update the legislature, or would like us to update the legislature, or do you want to wait until the kind of work group gets drafting and we bring those back to the TAC?
You're asking me?
I'm asking you, Sandy.
Well, so I have mixed feelings on that, and I'd kind of like to take the temperature of the room. I feel like I would like to be a little bit further in the process before we go back to the legislature and say, hey, guess what? We're doing this now. Yeah, I'm going to leave it at that. I don't know how other folks feel in the room, and certainly this would be the time to express any concerns. Or,
Sandy, is it okay to say something?
of course it is.
I agree with you.
Julie iPhone, I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. Other tribal folks in the room, how do we feel about that? Angie, Michael, Sonia, Lloyd? Are we good with that as a plan of action? Sonia, you're looking real serious.
Well, I just think, I mean, I see both ways. I see waiting, but since we've changed how we're doing it, we want to keep as much support and momentum with early learning as possible. And I just never want to have anyone feel like we weren't pulling them along with us or are blindsided by decisions that were made too far into the process when this is, what's working best for sovereignty and tribal communities is this format. And this is really putting tribal needs front and center. But then it would be nice to have something more packaged to take to them. And so I guess depending on what the update would be when I think we would want to approach. I just don't want someone to say, well, you've come too far in and we didn't even know, we're blindsided now. And that's not what we agreed to. And so that's just always like what I worry about.
So I think we would look for input from Melissa on that, who has the relationship with the legislatures.
Yeah, I think to your point, Sonia, it's both sides, and I do think the legislature prefers a package, and we want to bring folks along. If the committee wanted, I'd be happy to reach out to the legislators who sponsored the original legislation and see if they would like an update, or if they would prefer that we get further down the process. I think now that the TAC has sort of confirmed the direction and you've got your sort of next steps, if I'd be happy to provide that check-in and see what information they'd like and come back to the TAC in terms of how you want to put that together and how you want to participate in that update process, if that makes sense to you all.
Does to me. Yeah. I feel like that's a nice compromise that meets both sides, both needs.
Happy to do that.
So as a group, we're good with that as a plan moving forward. Okay.
Can I ask one more question?
Of course you can, Julie.
Alyssa, I just want to make sure that what you're doing when you're going back and forth between us and the legislators, you're just doing an update and a notification that we're in progress, that it's not all finished.
Yes. Yep. Letting them know that the Tribal Advisory Committee has decided that a tribal hub may not be the final answer, and that you are exploring some type of plan and approach that centers sovereignty. And would they like a more formal update, or would they prefer to wait until your recommendations are complete? Is that the level of information folks are comfortable with?
That sounds good. I just wanted to make sure that they understand that it's a living document process, and that we're not like finished yet. That was my concern, that when you go to them, that you're just letting them know that where we are now. That's all.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the question, Julie, and for the opportunity for me to say what I was thinking and make sure we're on the same page.
Thank you.
Well, so then let's move forward to our agenda item number 5, which is the Otella grant review. Carla and Dana.
Thank you. So I think Carla has some overview pieces and updates, and I mostly have questions.
Great, thank you. And I'm pretty sure everyone here knows who I am, but just in case you've forgotten or we haven't met virtually before, my name is Carla Branson. I'm a grant manager at DELC. Specifically, I do the fiscal grant management for the Otella grant. So most people have communicated with me, usually via email, about something about this grant and the funding and the claims at some point or the other. So I just wanted to come in today and just kind of do a quick update as the current version of the Otella grant is winding down. There are some final claims that just need to be done. There's still the federal portion of the grant, or the PDG portion, still out there. And there are tribes that still need to submit the claims, and that's due ideally by the end of January. I believe the agreement says February 1st, somewhere around there. And all of the claims were originally in our old EGM system, and because of the transition to DELC, we did have to move those over to our new awards management system that DELC has. I reached out to what I hope were the best contacts that I had for each of the the tribes working with specifically with this grant, and provided links to the new system, made sure that everyone had had accounts. And as a reminder, what the link was for the smart sheet to be able to submit the expenditure information. If you didn't get that information, or there's additional questions, please reach out to me. Whichever way works best, call me, send me an email. I can set up a meeting, and we can walk through the system. It's a pretty new system, so if someone in your business office, whoever's actually doing the submission, needs, you know, kind of like a guide on how to do it, or are there any questions on final claims, definitely let me know. I am here to help. And I think if I'm not mistaken, I believe there's 7 out of the 9 still have claims that need to be submitted. So just definitely let me know. And that's what I kind of have on that part in the regards to the financial or fiscal components of it.
Thank you, Carla. I guess any questions for Carla? Well, then I have some questions, if that's okay. So just trying to gather all the information that I can. And so I kind of just wanted to know about the last grant for the last period, like what worked and what didn't. I'd like to hear maybe what things went well, what would you change? And then also hoping to talk about like how you would like to be involved in the process, because there's some things that Carla and I are probably going to work together in research and figure out what we can and can't do. And based off that, there might be things like options that the tribes can decide on as far as how the agreement is written. And it would be nice to know what the best way to present that information is, like whether just send an email or bring it to a TAC meeting like this, or just put it in the agreement and present it. Like, I just want to know as much as would be helpful to share, to kind of give myself a grounding of where to go and how to go about the process. I should put my questions in the chat because I asked like 16 questions all at once. I apologize.
So if you're asking if I'm trying to be diplomatic because this has been an super ongoing issue in regards to the Department of Justice and language in grants. And I can't remember if your guys' grants were problematic, because there have been so many that have been. I've kind of lost count. And it's really not, and again, it's really not an issue with the with DELC. It's really more of an issue with the Department of Justice not being responsive to what each tribe needs in their grant agreement in order to preserve their sovereignty. So I guess, Don Quixote, you're gonna get your jousting stick out and see if you can fight that battle. It's my understanding that there's some work that's been done to move that forward, and I am eagerly awaiting that outcome. Yeah.
Sandra, again, is this okay to say something?
Yeah, you bet.
Welcome, Dana, and thank you for what you're doing. And welcome, Paulina. Thank you for what you're doing in advance for the short time you've been here already, and then whatever you're going to do in the future to help us. I'm Julie Seastrom, and I'm Hannes Coos. I'm from the Confederated Tribes of the Coos, Lower Umpqua, and Sayusla. Our education director is also on here today, but I don't want to put him on the spot because with this question, because it's like a brand new question as far as like, you know, the details of whatever it is that we used, the money that was allocated for our tribe. Is it okay? That's something that he could come back to you through an email as far as like, you know, any kind of description or whatever the details were on how we use the funds that were allocated to us? His name is Jamia Wassman.
he put in the chat that he had to step away, Julie, so just so that you know, he is no longer on the call.
Okay, but is that okay? That's something that he could follow up with an email to either one of you or both of you? Would that help you?
Yeah, and about how the funds, I saw Carla coming off mute, how the funds were used for last year, that would definitely be like a fiscal thing that Carla would manage. And then my question about like, how did it go last year? What worked well, is what I'm kind of looking for. So yeah, emailing both of us would be fine. And maybe we could include the updates and my questions in a follow-up email for after the meeting.
Thank you so much.
And Julie, I believe that you're one of the 2 tribes that are actually good to go.
Isn't that
I was
incredible?
just double checking. In regards to fiscal and expenditures, you guys are done and done. Larry submitted everything that you needed last week.
That's what I was hoping to hear. Thank you so much.
Right.
And I think for us, and we'll probably submit something in writing along with these questions, or we can have, I think it'd be really valuable to maybe set up a time to talk to each of the tribes about those funds, because they all were done so differently. I agree with Sandy. It's the Department of Justice that's so difficult in trying to get things through that delayed for some of the tribes, even though a lot of agencies have previously looked at what our attorneys will and will not give on. But
Can I say one more thing about that? One of the things that if I got it right or wrong, everybody else can correct me that are here from the different 9 tribes. But that was one of the attributes and one of the things that we appreciated about it, where we weren't given a set way of using the funds. So when you look at the programs and they're all different, I think that gives you a lot of information about the needs of the different tribes. So I think that that's a good thing. It might not fit into like, a prescribed simple format that might be easy to track for the federal government and that kind of thing. But maybe that's something that they need to know.
Thank you. That is helpful.
And then your other question about like involvement and process, I think the other reason for contacting each of the tribe is because some of us have different responsibilities within the tribe that may not be involved. Like I myself wouldn't be involved in some of those conversations around the contracts and stuff. That would be Alyssa or our Head Start director. So I think it would just be really good to maybe touch base with either the grant manager over that or the tribe education director itself.
Thank you.
I was away for a lot of the spring, and so Angie Fasana actually handled this for our tribe. So I don't really have very good feedback right now, but I will make sure to make note of the questions and ask her to respond.
Thank you. And then Alyssa, did you have anything to add about the agreements themselves?
I could just share that, as Sandy mentioned, we know the challenge has been at the DOJ level, and we've had varying levels of success in being able to remove language that waives sovereignty. And I don't know if you know off the top of your head, Carla, if this is one of the agreements where we were successful in not including that language, but this is something that I know the governor's office has really been taking seriously after the last government to government education cluster and kind of hearing that across the board. And so we've had some preliminary conversations at the end of the year to brief the governor's general counsel on what we've experienced on the agency side when we try to bring this up with DOJ and the inconsistent guidance that we receive, to provide some background to the Governor General Counsel to then engage in a conversation with DOJ. So hopefully we see progress over time. And I imagine at our next government to government education cluster, this will be something that Pooja brings up in more depth. But for now, I think we have a really we have a great relationship with our current DOJ attorney, and I think he's very open to finding pathways that work. And so we're hopeful that if we're hitting those snags, we'll be able to maybe see a little bit more creativity than we've seen in the past, and continue to work with DOJ going forward on not having to have the same conversation over and over again about waiving sovereignty.
Which speaks to the power of the G to G, doesn't it?
Wonderful. Well, I think there's only one other thing that hasn't been discussed, which is not exactly a Notella update, but the opportunity for families to share feedback. My understanding is it's going to be shared out in the Gov2Gov meetings, but we can also include it. It's because it's coming up pretty soon. So, and Alyssa, correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm just going off my memory, but this is part of DELC strategic planning. And even though we're not doing that as part of the TAC, it's going to be part of the subcommittee down the road, but that it's already scheduled to have an evening where families can give feedback. And those are the 24th and 25th of this month. So wanted to make sure that that was shared because it is limited in capacity of who can sign up for that. And want to make sure that you have the opportunity to distribute it out with plenty of time for people who want to do that, to sign up. And they are also compensated for their time.
Thanks for tracking that, Dana. And we can make sure you all see the flyers. And as she mentioned, this should go out to education cluster, but wanted to make sure you knew that opportunity was available.
Sandy, I could have given you 4 more minutes.
I am just glad that we communicated one another's mutual needs and that we moved the group and we're going to be able to be done at 4:30. This pleases me very much. Well, we have moved through all the items on our agenda. I want to say thank you to all of you who come and participate and give your time. I know that our time is precious, and I appreciate it. And I know that the DELC team appreciates it as well. Both Sonia and I speak to that, and I appreciate your input. For those of you who we have strong-armed into serving on the work group, thank you so much. If we were in person, I would bring treats, but we're not going to be, so we'll just, we'll work through it. And I make a commitment that it is a process that it has value, and that it's not a process that we can move through. I feel like the work that we did, just kind of going through it today, was good work. It was like, oh, okay, let's have this discussion. So I'm hoping that work group is going to be an easy one to move through. Having said all that, thank you so much.
Everyone stay safe with the weather. We don't know what it's doing, so everyone please keep safe with
There's
the
snow
weather.
out my window. I'm in Southern Oregon. It doesn't snow in Southern Oregon.
Be prepared as much as possible. Batteries and flashlights, they say.
Ugh. Ugh. Yes.
Yeah, we had a big fir tree go down on our property last night. We didn't figure out where it was, but we heard the crash. So more to come probably.
I was talking to my coworker in Eugene, and she said the whole fence between her apartment and the next just completely blew over, and so it's more to come by Saturday, they say.
Yep. Thanks, everybody.
Be safe. Be safe.
Yes, be safe and healthy, and thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.